Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing some battles featuring a pretty simple yet highly effective strategy in the Open Great League. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Executor8787, so many thanks for the battle submission. The team features a fairly standard core of Whiscash and Skarmory, and this trainer uses Tentacruel as the save switch to lure out any potential threats to help Skarmory sweep in the endgame. And this strategy was so successful that he was able to climb up to number 50 in the world on the global leaderboards. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out the team in action. Whiscash is greeted on the lead in the first match with Annihilate. Whiscash able to outpace and make it to the Scald before Annihilate can reach a potential Shadow Ball or close combat. Scald gets the shield, we see the save switch into the Tentacruel, checking for a potential opposing Lantern, but the opponent sends in Skarmory instead. So it looks like, hopefully, Skarmory can do quite well in the back because the opponent does not have a Lantern. This matchup is honestly not bad at all for Tentacruel. Due to the water subtyping, Steel Wing not going to be doing a whole lot of damage, so the opponent is very reliant on landing charge attacks, and that's going to be harder with the Scald debuff that just gets applied. Sky Attack, that's not going to be a problem. Opponent is at the Brave Bird. It's debuffed, but a Brave Bird is still a Brave Bird. We will see the shield. Tentacruel able to get the farm down. The opponent sends in their final Pokemon, which is revealed to be their own Whiscash, and this is honestly looking pretty good. The opponent has a Whiscash and an Annihilate, whereas he is going to have his own Whiscash and a Skarmory, so there's a lot of neutral play across the board. Mud Bomb is going to pick up the KO, just going to send in his own Whiscash. He can survive a Scald. Scald is not going to be a problem here. Scald is going to connect, does get the debuff. In comes the Annihilate. They do have enough for a Shadow Ball. Calling the bait, it is the Sandslash, unable to make it to the Scald, falling just short, but going to fire off the Mud Bomb. The Gambit works, the opponent thought it was a Scald, they commit the shield, and now shield's down. As long as energy is managed carefully, on Skarmory, this is looking good. The opponent successfully baits with the Sandslash, getting the shield, and this will be the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball, massive damage. Skarmory needs to be careful here and get an overfarm, and I believe that is going to be enough of an overfarm. Skarm needs to be able to withstand the mud shots and outpace the Whiscash. In comes the Whiscash, but Skarmory able to hang on, make it to the Brave Bird, knock out the Whiscash, and secure the victory. Moving to the next match of the set, leading Whiscash into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. A terrific lead, and the opponent is staying in this matchup, so it looks like they are completely core broken. Something in the back is also weak to Whiscash. The opponent is going to go for the Ice Punch. They're now going to send in their own Whiscash, going to farm up and fire off the Scald. Scald not going to be threatening a knockout, but it will do quite a lot of damage, and it does get the attack drop. That's a 50% chance to get the attack drop, and with the attack drop, the Scald is not going to be too threatening. But with both Whiscashes debuffed in this matchup, now these charge attacks are not going to be hitting quite as hard. We're actually going to see a switch into the Skarmory, saving that Whiscash on very low HP and catching the Mud Bomb. And now Skarmory can look for a very aggressive Steel Wing farm down. The Whiscash is able to make it to the Scald. Scald is going to do some okay damage onto the Skarmory. Thankfully, no attack drop is applied. Back in comes the Sandslash. Sandslash, these Steel Wings are hitting for neutral, and Sandslash not the tankiest mon around, so the Sky Attacks and Brave Birds will add up. Going for Sky Attack number 2, losing Charge Attack priority, but a Shadow Ice Punch will not knock out. Skarmory able to withstand the damage, return fire with this Sky Attack, and put a lot of pressure onto the opponent. They're going to let that through. What is the final Pokemon? The final Pokemon is revealed to be a Mandibuzz, and we're going to see a switch into the Tentacruel. And this Tentacruel is running Acid Spray, and since they only have one Pokemon left, they're going to get sprayed, and they're going to have no way to reset their defense drop. So the opponent made definitely a bit of an interesting choice there, is they weren't technically ABA weak to the Whiscash. I mean, they had their own, and switching in your own Whiscash down energy is going to be a losing matchup. So I guess it does make sense the way that they played it out, but this poor Mandibuzz, they're now at -4 defense. These poison jabs are just shredding through Mandibuzz, which is known to be extremely bulky, and Tentacruel just absolutely unrelenting with the Acid Spray spam. Another Acid Spray gets the shield. The opponent is going to fire off another Dark Pulse. I don't even think this is going to knock out. It'll be close, but Tentacruel able to hang on, get one more poison jab. In comes the Whiscash. The Mud Bomb is reached. This is double resisted, but their defense has been 4 stages debuffed. A Mud Bomb knocks Mandibuzz out of the sky, and the win streak is now at 2. Familiar lead in the next match, Whiscash into Annihilate. My guess is we'll see the same exact play pattern play out here. Go for the Scald, and then look to send in Tentacruel. This opponent is going to no shield. We see the switch into the Tentacruel, and Tentacruel will be met with energy from the Annihilate. It's the Shadow Ball. That's going to do quite a lot of damage. Annihilate is going to bank a move and send in Bastiodon. Bastiodon going to be hit with super effective damage from the Scalds, but the Poison Jabs are doing absolutely nothing. The Scald does get the debuff applied onto that Bastiodon, so the Bastiodon isn't doing as much damage as it typically would, and we see the Bastiodon, oh, they actually wait there because they're trying to potentially stall out the clock and not give Whiscash farm. But Whiscash, now with the Acid Spray debuff applied, can potentially go for a very aggressive farm down here and just exit with a massive amount of energy. In comes Dewgong as the opponent's final Pokemon, so they're running Annihilate and two things in the back that are weak to counter. The Mud Bomb is going to connect, and now in comes Skarmory. Despite the fact that Dewgong is technically a core breaker for the Whiscash Skarmory core, unfortunately Dewgong is unable to 1v2 in that matchup. Skarmory actually does way better than I ever would have thought that it would in this matchup. I mean, granted, in this particular game, Dewgong was chipped with a Mud Bomb prior, but Skarmory puts up one heck of a fight. Skarmory now just going to go for the Brave Bird. Brave Bird is going to be shielded. Dewgong gets the farm down, but going for the Brave Bird there minimizes farm. The opponent makes a nice switch out and catching the Mud Bomb onto the Bastiodon, and that is going to be enough to knock out. Back in comes the Dewgong. Dewgong going to be able to apply a debuff. Energy management is going to be exceedingly important in this endgame, able to farm up to the back-to-back Mud Bombs. This energy has been debuffed. Will it KO? It will not, but the Mud Shot down and leaving with the Scald loaded. And the Annihilate is just too low. Scald might be debuffed, but it will be enough to secure that victory. We've got a mirror lead in the next match, Whiscash versus Whiscash. This match almost always comes down to charge attack priority, as whoever goes first has the first chance to get a Scald debuff. You may notice the Whiscash IVs are not listed on this particular move graphic, and that was at the request of this battler. They are running a pretty interesting Whiscash IV set. The opponent makes a very interesting decision. They save switch into a Charmalolan Ninetales, and they're just going to get completely destroyed by Skarmory. This is why Charmalolan Ninetales is an extremely poor save switch, as it's just going to get completely destroyed by the Skarmory. Skarmory gets a massive farm down. Whiscash banked energy before switching out as well. This is probably going to be a double charm team, and there's nothing that warms my heart more than seeing toxic double charm teams get completely destroyed. Brave Bird does get shielded. The Skarmory's low enough, and their defense has been debuffed, so the opponent can just go for a Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb is going to KO. Back in comes the Whiscash, going for the Scald. If the opponent has a Charmer in the back, they like to save a shield for the Charmer, so they no shield. It's Wigglytuff in the back. Double charm gets absolutely destroyed, and the win streak continues. Moving to the next match, what an amazing lead. Whiscash into Lantern. Opponent save switches into a Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales. Oh my goodness, people are bringing out the toxic double fairy strats. I mean, at the very least, this one is a Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales, but look at the Steel Wings. Oh no, the Steel Wings just absolutely shredding through the Ninetales. The Skarmory is going to let itself get basically as low as it possibly can because it really doesn't want to give farm to the Lantern. Going for the Brave Bird right away. Again, another measure to ensure the least amount of farm for the Lantern as possible. Lantern does get the farm down, but Lantern is going to have to deal with a Whiscash with energy. Whiscash over farming and playing to the CMP tie, which Whiscash is going to win. Mud Bomb connects, getting that Lantern extremely low. One Surf is not going to be threatening here, and if it is the double fairy that we're expecting, and it is Wigglytuff in the back, get out of here, trainer. Get out of here. And that's going to be game over. Whiscash into Shadow Gligar. This matchup definitely is helped a lot if you're able to get the Scald debuff as the Whiscash. The opponent opts not to go for a potential charge attack priority tie, and they do get debuffed. And as someone who does run Shadow Gligar, if you get debuffed in this matchup goes from slightly disadvantageous to absolutely horrible when that debuff gets applied. The Dig doesn't do a whole lot. The Scald, we get another debuff and a switch out into the Tentacruel. This dig will hit for super effective damage, but it's double debuffed, so it's not going to do nearly the damage that it typically would. Able to withstand that damage, and now a choice to make for the Tentacruel, committing the shield on dig number 2. Opponent gonna send in Charge-a-Bug, and baiting out the electric type is what this Tentacruel is here for. The Scald is going to connect. Tentacruel trying to make it to another Scald. Unfortunately, the opponent is going to be firing off the last second X-Scissor, and X-Scissor will pick up the KO. Back in comes the Whiscash. Whiscash, unfortunately, gets one turn bring in and actually loses a mud shot that it should have gotten. Definitely not ideal to see. Whiscash is going to overfarm, go for 5 mud shots there. Very, very nice overfarm. And the Mud Bomb is going to pick up the KO. In the back, it's Poliwrath. And Poliwrath is a pretty big problem for Skarmory unless it's the Zero Shield. In the Zero Shield, the Poliwrath just cannot do enough damage here to get rid of the Skarmory, as they can go for the Scald, but especially since this is a regular Poliwrath, it's just not going to knock out. They go for the guaranteed debuff with the Icy Wind. Energy management will be extremely important here, and what an overfarm by the Skarmory. Brave Bird is needed to get the KO. Back in comes the Poliwrath, and Poliwrath can't get the move either. Energy management is so important on Skarmory in these endgames, and Skarmory able to sweep once again. We see same leads in the next match, Whiscash into Shadow Gligar, but this opponent plays it differently. They immediately switch out and send in Shadow Poliwrath. So this very well could be the opponent running my team, where they have the close combat Annihilate in the back. And we see the battler make a very interesting choice here. They could have brought in the Tentacruel right away, but instead they chose to go for Mud Bomb Chip, and it looks like they're going to fully commit to the farm down with the Tentacruel. So Exeggutor coming in with a game plan for how he wants to play against this team. He gets double debuff, the opponent not going for Scalds, instead going for the guaranteed debuff but lesser damage of Icy Wind. But now the Tentacruel leaves with 100 energy. At -2, those Scalds still add up, overfarming and throwing the Scald just before the Aerial Ace is reached. The Scald is going to pick up the KO. In the back, it is the close combat Annihilate, so it is someone running my team. But the way Exeggutor's played it, he's positioned himself really well, where he should probably be able to just win this game. And considering the team, you just no-shield this every time as Exeggutor, because if it's a close combat, then they're debuffed, but if it's a Night Slash, it's not going to knock out. And if Whiscash shields here, and it does, it's going to be able to make the Scald, and whether this gets shielded or not, this should just be game over. If it's shielded, they're going to get Brave Birded. If they no-shield, then they're just getting Steel Wing down, and yet another win added. Losing lead in the next match, leading Whiscash into Azumarill. I would love to see Whiscash switch in the middle of the 7th bubble to try and catch a Poliwrath. Switches at the back-to-back Mud Bombs there, and actually able to bait out Gligar. Gligar going to be met with the Scald. This does so much damage. It should command a shield from the opponent, and it does. And the Scald does get the debuff there, and that is very awkward for the opponent, as now they just don't have the same fast attack pressure that they did before. Tentacruel going for another Scald in this matchup. The opponent is willing to double shield, and we see another debuff, 2 for 2 on the Scald debuffs, letting it go. The dig will not knock out, and Scald just proves to be an absolute menace. Oh man, the Gligar barely able to get that farm down, but now they're double debuffed. Their energy is completely walled. This matchup right here is why Skarmory is so valuable. Skarmory just completely shuts down Gligar. I believe we were doing some research in the Discord, and if Shadow Gligar starts with 100 energy, the only thing that it loses to in the meta is actually Skarmory, because Skarmory just completely walls it, and that's a beautiful play. Farming up, sniping with the Mud Bomb. It won't knock out, but it will get them very low. The opponent sends back in the Azumarill, and Azumarill will be met with the Mud Bomb. But you've basically removed all of the HP off of that Alolan Sandslash, so the opponent is going to be in for a very tough go of it. And Whiscash, not really ever in danger of being farmed down, as Bubble doesn't do a lot here since this is the non-Shadow Whiscash. The opponent is going to have to throw. They end up throwing on alignment, and if you're the Whiscash, it's pretty safe to just no-shield here, and you can just win the game with Skarmory. Skarmory is going to fire off the Brave Bird. Brave Bird is going to mean goodbye to the Azumarill. In comes the Alolan Sandslash. They're unable to get the back-to-back charge attacks that they would need, and the win streak, I believe, is now up to 8. All good things must come to an end, so let's take a look at the game in which the win streak ends. Leading Whiscash into Lickitung, not a good matchup for the Whiscash. This matchup is a lot better if it's the Shadow Whiscash, as 2 Shadow Scalds come very close to knocking out, but with the non-Shadow, it gets a bit awkward. The Scald does get the debuff, the safe switch into the Tentacruel, and to my surprise, the opponent stays in and is throwing debuffed energy. This is an inefficient use of energy, so they must be very weak to Tentacruel in the back to follow this play pattern. Tentacruel is going to look to overfarm and go for the Scald, looking for the knockout onto the Lickitung. Lickitung lets it through, Scald is going to pick up the KO, and now the opponent chooses to send in Mantine. And Mantine, not what you're hoping to see when you have a Whiscash on your team, but at the very least, Exeggutor does have switch advantage. The Acid Spray is going to connect. In comes Annihilate, and Annihilate, I mean, you have to put the Whiscash here. The Whiscash can do nothing against the Mantine, so this is what you have to do. Going for the Scald, getting the attack drop, and now, do you call the Night Slash? Is it going to be the nuke? Calls the bait. It's the Shadow Ball connecting and messing up that bait call. I think is probably going to be game. In comes the Tentacruel, but Tentacruel can just get Night Slashed here. The opponent is going to be firing off the Night Slash. That is going to be shielded. Tentacruel really fishing for a debuff here with this Scald. The Scald does get shielded. In comes the Skarmory, and Skarmory needing to try and sweep, but this is going to be really, really difficult. Shielding the potential Shadow Ball, it's the Night Slash, waits the turn to try and avoid a catch, but the opponent just throws the Night Slash, and that landing just means it's probably just going to be game over, because this is basically Ice Beam or Water Pulse range, so, I mean, maybe if the opponent is running Bubble Beam on Mantine, but that's not too common at the current moment. Mantine, there's the Water Pulse, and the Tentacruel is just too low, so the win streak does come to an end at 8, but this helped him climb up past 2,900 elo and get to number 50 in the world on the global leaderboards. All in all, this just goes to show that the Whiscash plus Skarmory core is evergreen. It is extremely strong in the current moment, and the use of the Tentacruel really ended up helping this Skarmory succeed in the endgame, as the Tentacruel safe switch can potentially bait out the Lantern if it's there, and then just really help that Skarmory sweep in the endgame, because man, if you don't have a resist to flying moves in an endgame, you're going to have a miserable, miserable day going up against Skarmory. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.